Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Joanne Gabriel, and on behalf of Darien Library, I want to thank you for joining us this morning for our presentation and Q&A on propagating houseplants with Joy DiBiase from the Gardner Center of Darien. Houseplants, as many of you are aware, are having a major renaissance with a myriad of bloggers, YouTubers, and the like singing their praises as a source of relaxation, creativity, and even companionship. Today, we're going to learn how to make more houseplants to make us even happier and to gift to friends and family. Before we begin, I would like to mention that programs at Darien Library are made possible by the annual Friends of the Library campaign. We thank you for your support to make programs like this possible and our collections available to the community. Our expert this morning is a horticultural professional with over 20 years of experience in greenhouse management. At the Gardner Center, you will often see her fielding questions from customers while tending the myriad of exotic and truly wonderful houseplants that are available there. Please welcome Joy DiBiase.
Hi everyone, Happy New Year. Glad to see you guys, or not see you guys, but you can see me. So we thought we'd, it's January, all the Christmas decorations are gone, and people, now we're getting back into getting some foliage back in the house. So we'll talk a little bit about how to propagate some of that foliage. And like Joanne said, it's a great idea for gifting to friends, or if you just want to duplicate what you already have at home, or if your pothos or your ivy's getting a little long and you want to give it a haircut, but you don't want to throw out your cuttings, and you can propagate them. There's many different mediums you can use for propagation. We'll talk about a few of those in a minute, but we'll talk about the simplest one first, which is water. Water is the first and easiest propagation resource you can come across. And you can use it in many different ways, in many different styles. You can use it in propagation stations like we have here at the shop. We have different sizes for you. You can also use it. You can use different kinds of vases or containers, anything that's going to hold some water for you. And as we know, pothos is probably the easiest plant that you can root, that you can propagate. They pretty much do it on their own. You need a little help, obviously, from us. But as I'm here, I have a vase of some cuttings that actually belong to a customer of ours. His name is Nick. He dropped them off, his pothos plant off to me before Christmas, and I took some cuttings, and they've been rooting here, waiting for me to call him when they're ready. And you can see here that they've been sitting probably for about 3 or 4 weeks at this point. And this is the root structure that we have so far. So they're going to be ready to be potted very, very shortly. That's a good amount of roots that you see there. So that's going to be ready to be potted in soil very shortly. If you choose not to pot in soil, you can also find, like I said, a decorative container, a decorative vase, or a propagation station, and they can actually live in the water indefinitely. However, the one thing you would need to do is, if you choose to keep your cuttings in a vase of water, you'll need to fertilize them, because they get their nutrients from the soil that they're planted in. If you choose to leave them in water, you'll need to supplement that nutrients with a monthly water fertilizing. So you want to keep that in mind. If you're planning on keeping your cuttings in water, you're going to want to give them some nutrients that they're missing because they're not in soil anymore. And like I said, you can take cuttings, You can take cuttings off your long pothos, and you can choose to root this whole vine if you like, or you can cut individual nodes from this pothos. And I'm going to, you see where this rooting is right here? I don't know if everybody can see. There's this little root right here. Where you're going to snip is you're going to snip right in between. Here's your little node, your little pothos node. Again, we can go straight into water with this if you like. But if you choose to use a different medium, this is a great time of year for propagation. Why? Because we have all these little seed containers for starting your seeds. You can also use these for propagation. And there's a few different mediums you can use besides water. We'll talk about those real quick, and then we'll talk about who's going to go live in these little peat pots. Like I said, being that it's seed starting time, one great medium is a seed starting mix. This would be great, this would be great medium to use if you don't want to use water, seed starting mix. Also have another great product in the shop. It's the Newt Rescue Mix. Really good for root rot if you have it, but also fantastic for propagating. And you could also use sphagnum moss, which is the next great, this one is sphagnum moss, so you can also use that. And if you choose to do individual noding, you're going to choose the medium you want, whether it be the seed starting mix or the rescue mix or the sphagnum moss. You'll fill up your cups, your little peat pot cups with your medium, and you're going to stick each individual node into each individual cup. So that's a great little way to start. I mean, in here you have how many plants? 20. So you have 20 peat cells in here. So you can do 20 little nodes of pothos or philodendron in here, or ivy if you want to. Ivy is another great one that will propagate in water. Some plants don't like to propagate in water. Some plants have to have a medium of some sort because they will rot if they're in the water. But your top propagation, water propagation would be pothos, philodendron, ivy, and everybody remembers mom or grandma having a little spider plant in their house. Lots of the 70s and the 80s plants are coming back into fashion, just in different varieties. Obviously, your little babies. I don't know if anybody recognizes these little spider plant babies, but of course, you plop your baby off, you put her in a little cup of water, and she's going to grow roots and be ready to go. So that's another one great to do in water. I'm actually going to get off the propagation subject for a second, because back to what we were talking about, decorative vases. If you have kind of a cool, funky vase at home that you don't know what to do with, not only can you propagate in there and create like an awesome display of root structure that you can actually see, there's plants that you can plant directly in water and not soil. So you can use peace lilies, or spathiphyllums they're called, can be planted. Here's your plant, here's your roots. Like I said, you do have to supplement with your fertilizer since there's no soil in here, but spathiphyllums can go straight in water. You can do a spider plant straight in water. You can do the full pothos plant straight in water. And I don't know, might be hard for you guys to see because it's on my phone through a camera, We had a customer come in who had rooted her Monstera Deliciosa in glass beakers. These beakers were huge beakers. And they came out, I don't know if you guys can see that. I know it's kind of hard because
back up. There we go. A little bit better.
So all that beautiful root structure, I mean, that speaks for itself. It doesn't necessarily have to be a soil thing. You can just do all roots, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty awesome. But like I said, just substitute with fertilizer in your water since there's no soil.
How often would you have to fertilize if you're just growing in water?
I would fertilize your water once a month. Once a month should be more than enough for fertilizing because they'll get the nutrients that they need.
Can you use just a houseplant dropper, the liquid fertilizer?
You can do that. Oh, absolutely. Like the little Schultz dropper, sure. You know pretty much how much volume of water your vase or container holds, then yeah, you can use the little Schultz droppers. Of course, absolutely. The other thing you can do is the blue juice. We call it blue juice, which is either the Miracle Grow blue powder or the Jack's Classic blue powder. And you measure that in your watering can and use that water too. But yeah, you can absolutely use your dropper if you know how much volume of water your container holds. And they can, like I said, ivy, pothos. You can directly plant a spathiphyllum. Some of them are amazing in just water. Some of them not so much. Some of them need a nice medium. Some of them need a little help. So now that you're talked about your ivy and your pothos and your spider plants and your peace lilies, some guys need a little help when you're planting, even in a medium. You need a little root hormone. You need a little bit of rooting hormone.
And that's for plants that are going to be going into soil.
That's for plants that are going into soil, some type of soil medium, which like we talked about would be the rescue mix or the seed starting mix or the sphagnum moss. One of those guys would be, sorry, I have my cart here if I'm bending up and down. Tradescantia. Tradescantia, there's a large variety of Tradescantias. The most popular ones right now are Tradescantia Nanook or Tradescantia bubblegum. Another one, like I said, that you might have seen in mom or grandma's house that's getting back to popularity now is Tradescantia zebrina. So that's coming back into fashion.
What's the common name?
What's that? Oh, the common name. Please nobody yell at me. The common name is the Wandering Jew. The Tradescantia zebrina is known as the Wandering Jew, which is probably a really familiar name, like I said, to some of you whose mom or grandma had these plants back in the day. It's called the Wandering Jew, and it's a Tradescantia family, beautiful, iridescent when the light just catches it the right way, purpley, silvery, iridescent. I have some in the shop right now, but I chose the bubblegum because she needs a snip anyway. She's getting a little tall up here, so she needs a little pruning anyway. So we're going to prune this off. I don't know if you guys can see. I'm going to take her. She has a new growth. Yeah, see, it's hard to see when we're not in person. She has a little new growth here that's connected to the main stem. So I'm actually going to snip her right there.
Right above the
new growth. And you do want to peel back some of this excess. You want to peel back some of this excess here to get to that nice new fresh stem here. Give her a snip. Open your rooting hormone. She's going to go for a dip. Just to get the tip of her stem. A little rooting hormone here. And again, If you don't want to use these guys, you can have little 2-inch pots at home, little 2-inch plastic pots, or little 2-inch terracottas would work too. You're going to choose your medium, and you're going to stick her right in the medium. These guys probably root faster than any other plant I've come across, even the pothos. The Tradescantia clippings with a little bit of rooting hormone to help. I mean, they just like that. They're very, very fast rooters. So
could you do that without rooting hormone powder?
You could do it without rooting hormone. Yep, absolutely. You could definitely do this without rooting hormone. Also, I just like to give them a little boost. It's just something that I was taught way back when. The rooting hormone goes with the Tradescantia. Rooting hormone doesn't have to be used with everybody. Like I said, use it with the Tradescantia because that's the way I was taught. I know, Joanne, you just showed me that you have a beautiful Dracaena cutting that's strictly in water. And I use rooting hormone when I do my Dracaena cuttings also when I stick them in their medium. But as you can see, you don't need it, don't have to use it. So it's just something that I do, not something that's necessary. Dracaenas, speaking of Dracaenas, like I said, Joanne has a beautiful one that's just in a glass vase that has a lot of beautiful root structure that's only in water. So you can use Dracaena also. This one is Dracaena reflexa, Song of India. She's going to be my sacrificial. She's going to be my sacrificial Dracaena for today. I promise she'll be fine, guys. Don't worry about it. So if you want to root your Dracaena, again, you're going to choose a place to cut her. We'll talk about that another time because pruning and propagation kind of go hand in hand, but we can't talk about all that in one shot. So I'm just going to give her a stiff. I'm going to cut her head off. I promise she's going to be fine. But you do want to always remember when you are cutting down something like a Dracaena or Reflexa or the Tradescantia, you have to peel back some of these excess leaves here. And you want to have a nice tip. You also want to have this nice fresh meat up here that was under those leaves. Always a fresh cut. She can go into water. She can go into a medium. If she goes into a medium, like I said, I was taught this way for Dracaena. A dip into the rooting hormone and into your medium. Don't have
once it's in the soil, does it need a lot of light? Obviously,
so it's going to go by what particular plant you're propagating. The Dracaenas don't require a lot of light. They can live in low, moderate, or bright light. So it's not going to be too much of a difference for them. Whereas the Tradescantia, that bubblegum Tradescantia, she's going to want a bright light to live in. Sorry, lots of things going on in my brain. When you do go into your medium with these fresh cuttings, always give them a drink. Always give them a drink when they go into the soil so you can get that rooting hormone going, or the fresh cut that we just did get some moisture to them. So always give them a fresh drink. Depending on what type of plant you're propagating, depends on what kind of light they're going to require. If it's a bright light plant, then you have to keep it in the bright light. If you're doing Dracaena or pothos, they can do low, moderate, or bright and direct. So it depends on what kind of plant you're doing. I'm just looking at her over here. This is if you have a larger philodendron or pothos or a larger leaf monstera, you can always do good old disposable like Dixie cups, drinking cups. some sphagnum moss. I took a cutting of this decursiva. So here's her nice node, nice little cutting we have there. And I buried her down into some nice sphagnum moss. There you go. Keep your sphagnum moss consistently moist. If you want to, you can even do mini greenhouse effect and stick her in a plastic Ziploc. Can't seal her up continuously, just to give her some moisture, like a little mini greenhouse effect. She will have to be opened, the bag will have to be opened at some point, but being that she's in the Monstera, Philodendron, Pothos family, not really necessary to have to do that. Then you have, I know I'm all over the place.
Hang on one second before you move on. We
Yep.
do have a couple of questions.
Go for it.
Going back to water propagation, if
Yep.
you place your plant in water permanently, how often should you change that water?
So you're going to want to change that water weekly, every 7 to 10 days, because it's going to get funky. You know, if you have a bouquet of flowers at home that you've gotten from the flower shop, you can see that the water gets funky because, you know, they're biological creatures. They secrete, you know, biological secretions. So you're going to want to change your water probably every 7 to 10 days, which would be great because it keeps them in a fresh water, and sometimes bacteria grows in there. I actually had a problem with, I did have another customer that dropped off a pothos that I had to cut back and root. It was a very old pothos, and the water and the roots started to get moldy and funky. So I had to make sure I was on top of changing that water. If you're going clear glass, you'll be able to see right away if anything's getting funky or weird or moldy, or I would suggest every 7 to 10 days, give your water a fresh change out.
And another question, which was the plant that you showed in your phone. Can you tell us the name of that plant?
That was a Monstera. That was Monstera Deliciosa. Very popular. They grow out big like this. They can climb for you. If I would run and get one, but I don't want to leave you guys. Monstera Deliciosa. It has all the cuttings. It's known as the Swiss cheese, Monstera Swiss cheese. Everybody's familiar.
I'll look for a picture.
Here, do you want me to go? I can.
No, it's all good. I'll put a link in something. Yep. And then one last question. The remaining Dracaena plant, will it push out a new stalk from under the soil sometime in the near future?
So where you've cut it, it's actually going to push off 2 new cuttings coming out this way. So where you've cut her tip off, she's going to come out this way in 2 new branches. However, if you don't always have to just take her and put her in her own little separate pot to propagate her. If you have a Dracaena at home and she's getting too tall, you can chop her head off. You can, like I said, clear back some of those excess leaves to get yourself a nice tip. And you actually can go right back into the pot that she lives in. So you can do it that way too. You can just go right into the pot that she already lives in. So that helps, because sometimes people buy Dracaenas and they get too tall. I mean, you know, sometimes they touch the ceiling. Like I said, you can take her head off, peel back some of her excess leaves, dip a little root hormone, or you don't have to do the root hormone, and just right smack into the soil that the pot that she already lives in. and it'll probably take her a month to start rooting. That's another thing everybody needs to know. When you're propagating, you need to have patience, 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 patience. Sometimes these plants take up to 2 months to show any kind of root structure at all. So be patient, be patient, be patient. Where were we? Oh, succulents. As I'm looking over here, we have succulents. Succulents are also super easy. This girl right here, you can tell some of your succulents, you buy them and they're so cute and they're so cute. And then all of a sudden they start getting all tall, and then sometimes they start doing one of these and they fall over and they're growing sideways, and everybody's like, what am I supposed to do with this thing now? Again, you're gonna get your clippers out. I promise no plants will be hurt in this video. And you're going to peel back. Always peel back. Always peel back those excess leaves.
Now, is it true that you can also take those leaves and put them on top of soil?
Yes, absolutely. So you're going to give her a fresh little cut. I'm actually going to go a little further back. This one would be best in a little terracotta or a little 2-inch, a little 2-inch plastic, or the little peat pots, just because succulent root structures are barely anything. So you don't want to risk, you're not going to go back in here with her because it's just going to be too much soil density, possible risk of overwatering those little tiny roots that they're going to get. But now you have a little nice little cap, and you just drop her in, and then you can have little, little baby succulents all the way around. And leaves falling off succulents, you know who's great for that? Jade plants. Jade plants are great for that. You pop off a leaf, drop it in the soil, or again, do your little individual pots. Jade plants are great for propagating. Just one leaf. All you need is one leaf. Some of you guys at home probably have succulents already, and you'll be able to see that the leaves that are growing on the main stem have their own roots. So if you want to pull a leaf or two off that are already showing roots outside of the soil on the plant and plant them in a little 2-inch, a little pot, go for it. Because they already have the roots growing. They'll show you, they'll let you know that they're like, hey, I want my own pot. I don't want to be involved with this. I want to be my own plant right now. So totally.
Do you plant those leaves horizontally, or do you stick them in?
Nope, you're going straight. Yeah, you can do either or, because when the jade leaves do fall off their plants and they drop into the existing soil, they will root horizontally. But go vertically with these guys. If you're doing it on purpose, if you're purposely trying to propagate, I would just straight go vertical with these guys for sure. Yep. You could do the same with, yep. So I think that's all the succulents I have to.
How about Christmas cactus? Could you drop leaves of those in soil?
You could, yep. You could drop leaves of those, absolutely, an individual leaf, or a little bit of a longer stem, sure, absolutely. But again, like I said, be patient. You have to be so patient. 2 weeks from the time you cut it and nobody has roots, don't get discouraged, because some of them take, like I said, up to 2 months to show any kind of root structure at all. And some of them, are quick. Some of them 2 weeks at the max. Some of them 2 months. So just be patient. But yes, you can also do that with a Christmas cactus. Absolutely. Yep.
And how many jade leaves do you need to propagate to make a new plant? Just one, right?
Just one. Yep. I mean, it's going to take her, if you're doing one leaf, it's going to take her a few years to start to look like this. But once you get those roots showing, that's it. She's alive. She's going to thrive. She's going to grow off. She's going to sprout off another baby at some point. It's just all a matter of waiting and being patient. It'll take a few years for her to get this way. But yeah, you just, once you do that one leaf, you're going to get a full plant. Yes, absolutely. Same with Peperomia or Hoyas, or one leaf can turn into one plant. It's funny, if you shop here, being that I'm the supervisor and I see all the plants and I'm constantly touching them almost every single day, I have a grower in Long Island, one of our wholesalers in Long Island, and they grow their own plants. And you can see they come in and they're in, 4-inch pots, so they're established, but you can see that they come in and you can see the start leaf. You can see where the plant started, that one leaf it started from, turned into this multi-leafed little plant now. It's pretty cool. It's actually amazing that one little leaf turned into this. One little leaf turned into a watermelon, this big plant. Like I said, it takes a while, but patience is a virtue, and eventually you will get out of one leaf something that looks like this.
What plant is that? That's beautiful.
This is watermelon peperomia. Watermelon peperomia is done by individual leaves, propagating individual leaves. She will need a medium. The best medium for her is some type of soil. So you stay away from the water, you stay away from the sphagnum moss, and you use either a seed starting mix or this rescue mix that we have here. Pardon me. These guys are a little different. They start from a leaf, but they start from half a leaf. So you're going to pull your leaf off. You're going to take off the petiole. And you're actually going to slice her. You can cut or you can slice. We'll cut. Almost half. You're going to go down almost half the leaf, like this. She's a pretty big leaf, so she'll need a decent size receptacle to root into. And we'll go with a smaller one so I can give you an idea. Here, we'll go one of these guys. So this is what you're going to put in the medium. This is it. Half this little leaf is going to go stick in your pot. You're going to want to come down probably about a quarter of the way in, so it's not going to flop all over the place. And this leaf will turn into this plant. Again, you have to be patient. It probably takes about 2 months for this leaf to sprout off one new little leaf. I have seen people do Peperomia in water, but it doesn't work so well. It's always better to do the individual half leaf for these guys. She's the only Peperomia I have in the shop right now. There are different Peperomias where you can do the petiole. This isn't Peperomia, this is Hoya, but just to give you an idea of what I'm trying to say, the petiole is the stem that goes from the leaf to the main stem. This little guy, this little stem right here, you'll take her off. Let's see. I will take her. See this guy here, this is the part you're going to want to put in the medium. And this is where she's going to root from. Again, a medium, not water, would be better for little guys like this, the succulent, the more succulent-ish Peperomias or Hoyas. And it's funny, as I was saying, my grower in Long Island who does their own growing, and I can see how they started. I don't know if anybody can see this leaf right here. This was the start of this plant. So they took a little leaf, they put it in a little pot with some growing medium, and eventually she turned into this.
To cut the leaf on that one?
There she is right there. That's her start leaf. That's her beginning, one little start leaf that eventually turned into this beauty. And if anyone wants to know, this is Hoya obovata.
Did you have to cut the Hoya leaf like you did with the Peperomia?
So no, the Hoya leaf, I left her petiole on. Some, it depends. It can go both ways, but because these guys are so long, their petiole is actually their main stem. So because they're so long, you can do it either way. You can cut this girl in half, or you can cut her stem, and you can give her a small cut and make your own. I don't know if anybody can, you can make your own little petiole. So you can do it either way, but those guys would definitely need, I would suggest doing a medium from some. Don't do those in water. They just don't do well in water. They get a little funny, they get a little funky. They'll do better in a medium than they will in water. A lot of plants are like that. Like people say fiddle figs, Ficus fiddle figs, you take one leaf off and you put the petiole in water. I've never had luck doing that. My fiddle figs that I've always tried to propagate have always rotted. I've never had luck in the water with them, so I would suggest using a medium. Some people have great luck with those. I personally haven't, so I always put them in a medium. So it's just a matter of kind of what type of plant it is, what medium you want to use. But then again, like I said, some people have luck in some ways. Some people have had luck in other ways. Some people haven't had luck at all. And never get discouraged. Never get discouraged. Just keep trying. If it didn't work that way, try it a different way. If it didn't work that way, try a different medium. Never get discouraged and always be patient. Patient. Just be patient. Like I said, 2 months, sometimes 3 months to just show one little.
How about snake plants or Sansevieria?
Snake plants, super easy too. You take a sword. You're going to cut a piece of that sword, just like you did. You're going to chop the sword, just like you did with the Peperomia. You're going to make a nice new cut on that sword, and soil. I would do soil for the Sansevierias, for the snake plants. Yep, I would do soil for them. But yep, cut that sword. Just give it a nice cut, because you're opening this up. You're opening this up to create where they're like, oh, okay, so I'm free now from this plant, so I'm going to start my own plant, and I'm going to, start my own thing. So yeah, swords of the snake plants, same way as you would do the Peperomias, a nice cut.
I've got a couple more questions.
Mm-hmm.
One is about the Christmas cactus. And if you're going to place the leaf, it's on the soil, correct? You wouldn't do that in water.
No, I wouldn't do that in water. That would be soil. Like I said, any succulent, I prefer any kind of succulent, fat, full leaf to go into soil, not water. They just seem to do better in the soil because they're not water-loving plants as they are in general. So I prefer to do them in some type of soil. That would be the way I would go about it, absolutely, because they're not really water-loving plants as it is. So you're sticking them in a whole vase of water, and they're like, oh, I don't like this.
And can you propagate a prayer plant in the same way?
I've never tried a prayer plant, but yes, I would say yes. Again, cut your petiole, your stem that goes from the main stem to the leaf, that in between, and I would go into soil with those. I would go straight into soil. Yep. It doesn't always work. So again, don't get discouraged, because sometimes it doesn't always work. Sometimes it's just not the right leaf, or it's not the right environment, or that leaf is just like, no, I just don't feel like it. Why'd you take me off? I want to stay with my mother plant. And then some are just like, woohoo, I'm free, start my own plant, woohoo. But don't get discouraged. But yeah, you can do the same with a prayer plant. Yep, absolutely. Yep. And then some little guys, like I have this little Pilea here. Some guys already start their own propagation without our help. They're just do it on their own. And this is the Pilea peperomoides, which is also known as the Chinese money plant and the friendship plant. And because it's known as the friendship plant is because they create their own babies. So you can just pull these little babies out and just plant them in their own little 2-inch pot, and you gift them all to your friends. And because they're ready, they're saying, hey, let's go. I want to go, send me off to somebody else.
Can you give me some examples of, can you give me some examples of other plants that produce pups?
So spider plants will produce pups. Pilea peperomoides will produce pups. I don't know if any of you have heard Mother of Thousands. It's in the Kalanchoe family, and she actually creates her pups off of her leaf. So you have, here's her leaf, say it's, like she's like a little triangle shape. All around the outer leaf are all new tiny little babies that you can just pull right off, and you don't even have to plant them. Just throw them on a layer of soil and they'll just start doing their thing. I actually have a jade plant in the shop that has a stowaway Mother of Thousands baby that dropped into the soil at some point when we were moving things around. And she now has a little Mother of Thousands plant that's about this big that I'm waiting for her to get a little bigger so I can pull her out and put her in her own pot. But yeah, Mother of Thousands, they create their own babies that you can propagate. And when I'm on the spot, I can't think. Like I said, jade plants, when jade plants naturally drop their leaves into the soil that the jade plant is already planted in, they'll just start rooting themselves. Most succulents will do that. They drop a leaf in their own soil and they'll just start rooting themselves. Like I said, some of you might have succulents at home where you can actually see the roots, the exposed roots that are growing off the leaves actually on the plant. So yeah, they're, not all of them, but most of them, and they don't create their pups, but anybody that's familiar with the pothos, they're waiting to be propagated, like just waiting. The reason why is each leaf has its own node. Now, that's not for us. That's not for our benefit, because they're like, oh yeah, propagate me. When they go out in the wild, anybody who's been to Hawaii or anybody who's been over in the Amazon, or if you've ever been to the jungle or in person, which I'm really jealous if you have, because I haven't and I would love to. These attach. They attach to the tree bark. They attach to other plants. They're vines. They want to climb. So all these little nodes want to attach to something. But like I said, for our benefit, it's just easy to chop, and each one of these nodes will turn into a root. So that's great for us. I don't know if they mind. I don't think they mind so much. They seem happy. they're pretty easy to grow. They don't mind living inside, but this is so they can climb when they're out in the wild and do their natural thing.
We have another question. What do you do with Bromeliad pups?
I'm sorry. Oh, Bromeliad pups. Whew. That's a tricky one. What you want to do is you have to sacrifice the mother. So you have your mother, and say she has 3 or 4 pups that have grown off of her. You want to take that whole mother plant off and then just have your pups by themselves, because the mother plant has done her job. She flowered, she's given birth. Unfortunately, it's time for her to go. I've taken the pups, I've taken them out of the soil, taken the pups off the mother plant and put them in their own pots, and it does seem to work. But the best way to go about that is, I wish I had a bromeliad in front of me. Here's your mother plant. You have a couple of pups coming off the side. You want to get as far down as you can to the base of that mother plant. Get a nice sharp knife and just hack her right off. So basically you're getting rid of mom and you're keeping the babies. Like I said, you can pull the whole plant out of the soil. You can pull the pups off from the mother and put them in their own pots if you want to. The best way is just get rid of mom. Just get rid of mom. We have about 15 minutes left, I think. I'm going to do a quick touch. There's another way to propagate that I haven't had much experience with, but it's called air layering. Air layering is used in a lot of the bigger growers with a lot of the shrubbery outside, like rhododendrons, camellias, azaleas. But that is something you can do with some of your indoor foliage. Anything that would have a thick woody stem, or a thick stem like Ficus Ficus fiddlefig, or Ficus elastica, even some Chinese evergreens, which are Latin aglaonemas. Air layering is when you're actually making, how can I say this? You're making a cut into the stem. You're not taking the whole stem off. You're actually, you're giving them like an injury. You're actually giving them an injury. Say the stem is my arm, and you're going to take your knife. I'm not going to cut my arm off, don't worry. And you're going to take your knife and you're going to slice off, almost like you're slicing off a piece of skin off your arm. You're going to slice a piece of skin off that stem. And then you're going to pack it. You're going to pack around it with some moss, sphagnum moss or green moss, anything that's going to hold that moisture really well. You're going to pack that all around that wound that you've just created. And then you can wrap plastic, saran wrap, and you want to make sure you're sealing on the top and on the bottom of that big ball of sphagnum moss that you've wrapped around the wound. And that's going to create a root. And then once you create that root, you can take that whole stem off and plant her into a whole separate pot. Like if your fiddle fig is huge, but she's got something coming off this way, it's called air layering. It's something that I've tried a few times. I've had a little bit of success with it. It's just something I can't constantly do, but that's another way to propagate. And it's good to use for some of the plants that don't do well taking a leaf and putting it in the soil. Some of them don't do well. Aglaonemas or Chinese evergreens, I have never had luck propagating those. Never. Because air layering is a better situation for them. Is you create a wound, you pack that wound, and then you cover that wound, and then it heals as it creates new roots. So that's another way of propagation.
So you would do that towards the top of the plant because you want it to be a smaller plant?
No, you can do that you can, within, you want to get a nice, thick, chunky part of the plant. You don't want to, not too close to the top, because the top growth is going to be too weak to support that wound that you've just created. So you want to make sure you get a nice chunk of stem that you're wounding to start that with.
You're not creating two plants, you're actually just improving one.
You're creating one. Yep. So you're creating one new plant from an existing, larger, like I said, so if you had this Dracaena, now you've created a wound. So you're going to take the sphagnum moss and you're going to wrap the sphagnum moss around that wound, wrap your plastic around it, and then this eventually will start rooting. Once you see the roots here, then what you can do is you can take her off here and plant this.
And you still have the plant below.
And this will at some point sprout off. Yes, this will probably sprout off something new for you. Yes, yes. This is a very small Dracaena. I would have taken it, with a Dracaena that has more established. And exactly, you still have the plant below, but now you have this individual guy that you're going to plant. Which I'm actually going to try that after because now I've sacrificed the Dracaena. So
okay.
we're going to pack her up.
I have one other question about a type of propagation that we do outdoors in the summer, but maybe not so much indoors, probably because it's a little messy, but who knows? Would you ever divide houseplants?
Of course, absolutely. You can absolutely divide houseplants. Some plants need to be divided. Some plants like to be divided. Alocasia would be one that you'd want to divide because they have individual bulbs. And see, there's so many to talk about. Sometimes it's hard to cover everything in 1 hour. Alocasia would be something that you'd want to divide. Snake plants you can divide nice and easy. You can pretty much almost divide anything as long as it's at the established point where it can be divided. But yeah, that's another way of propagation, is dividing into, of course, it doesn't always have to be cuttings and, little cuttings. You can absolutely divide. That's definitely, yes.
Any other thoughts on other types of division of plants that we might have in our own house right now?
Snake plants, ZZ plants are super easy to divide. It's hard to say depending upon what type of plant it is. Like, you can't very well go divide a fiddlestick because usually you have one stem and then you have the canopy. That's when you get your air layering involved. You can divide the watermelon Peperomia if she gets too big. You can see this is 3 individual plants in this pot. So you can divide her. You can divide anything that has multiple. You can definitely divide this jade plant into probably 3 or 4 individual 4-inch plants. So you can pretty much divide anything.
That's the ultimate form of propagation.
Exactly. Divide it.
Is there any plant you wouldn't touch? It's like so fussy that if you touch it, and probably shouldn't be living in our living rooms.
Aglaonemas aren't fussy, but aglaonemas or the Chinese evergreens are definitely one of the ones. Like I said, I have never had success propagating those, and I've worked with women and people, and they've never had success propagating those. So Chinese evergreens, I might stay away from trying to propagate. If you want to go for it, knock yourself out. I would definitely air layer them. You have to be careful with a lot of the new specialty varieties that are out now when you're fooling around with them or trying to separate them or trying to propagate them, because they get stressed out and they're already finicky as it is. Alocasia would be one that I would be careful with trying to propagate or trying to divide. It's not that it can't be done, just be mindful about it.
How about something that has sap? You know, so I have is that called the Ficus Elastica?
The Ficus Elastica would be a great candidate for air layering. I have had people tell me that they've had success taking off a leaf and doing a water rooting or a soil rooting. I haven't tried. I've always been taught or told that the best way to propagate the Elastica or the Ficus rubber tree is an air layering type of way to do it. So Ficus are pretty resilient, especially a rubber ficus. I mean, super resilient. You can pretty much do anything to them, and they'll be like, all right, I'm going along with it. I'll go with the ride. So if you want to try a few things, if you want to fiddle around with it, go for it. See what happens.
What about African violets? Those are kind of fussy.
Ooh, African violets. I've never done an African violet. I would. Oh, that's a tough one. Flowering plants aren't really my thing. I could give it a go and then get back to you guys and see how it works. But African violets, if anybody's had one that's had one for years, you notice that their stem starts to get very long and very hard. And you have like this long stem, and then you have this beautiful, canopy of flowers and foliage. I would think about trying to do something with that stem, with that wooden stem, maybe an air layering thing. You could try and take a leaf and do it in a propagating medium, like a soil medium of some sort, and see what happens. I've never tried an African violet, I have to say.
What the end result is that experimentation is sort of the best way to go about it, and
yeah,
you're not dealing with a whole group, and it's fun.
And be patient. Like I said, some of them will snap it together in like 2 weeks. Some of them can take 3 months. So just because you're not seeing anything doesn't mean that you've done it wrong or it's not working. Or 3 months from now, you might wake up and you'd be like, "Oh look, yeah!" Then it's time to celebrate.
We do have a comment from Sharon saying African violets can be relatively easily propagated from a leaf in medium.
They probably can. I've never done it.
Yeah, and patience. And how about orchids and their air roots?
So their air roots, you always want to make sure their air roots are exposed. Orchids are technically epiphytes, and they like to grow out in the wild. They like to attach themselves to tree bark. They're never really in a soil medium when they're out in the wild. So always make sure your air roots are exposed for your orchids. And you could, never done the orchid either. Nope, can't say I've ever done the orchid either, but always make their air roots exposed because they need that air. They're epiphytes, and like I said, they normally don't grow in a medium when they're out in the wild. So that's why we plant them in sphagnum moss or orchid bark, because they want to have a nice airy area for their roots to grow into. You could try, experiment. Like you said, just do an experiment. Just do some experimentation.
My one last question for today, because we're running out of time, is: are there any plants from outside in the summertime that you can overwinter indoors and propagate? Like I'm thinking coleus, but is there anything that you can sort of overwinter and sort of make better for the next season?
I know people have had success with geraniums overwintering and propagating in the house. Some people have had luck with begonias coming into the house. It's always hard when you have a tropical plant outside that loves to be out in the summer in the humidity, and then you try and bring it in the house in the winter when it's dry and hot, and they don't like it. They get fussy. I've never tried anybody from outside to bring it, but I know geraniums, begonias, coleus can be technically used as an indoor house plant. It doesn't have to be an outdoor, plant. Like you bring your gardenias inside and your hibiscus inside, and they just don't like it. So that might be a little more tricky. That might be a little more tricky with our climate during the winter here.
Sharon also mentions that begonias for her have been relatively easily propagated from a leaf pinned down on a medium.
And that's what it is.
And covered like a greenhouse.
Yeah, it's all about taking that leaf and just in a little medium, be patient, and yeah, they'll do it. They will do it.
Okay, great. Well, this has been a wonderful hour learning so much about propagation and plants, and makes me very happy. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. And thank you, Joy, for your expertise and inspiration. I hope everyone will get a chance to experiment in their own homes and maybe give some gifts or have some fun with it.
And be patient.
Exactly. Patience, I think. Patience and experimentation.
Patience.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you next time.